All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of What's What BR. We've got a returning guest here. We have Congressman Garret Graves. How are you, Congressman? How are things?
Doing well. How about you?
It's a nasty Monday morning with a bunch of weather that we all kind of had to deal with, but hey, we're all still here, and it's Monday, and we get a little bit of excuse to blame it on the rain for a little bit. So
Yep. Yeah. It's days like this. It makes you wonder if you need to be outside building an ark. It was pretty intense last night.
yeah, I think we've got this for a couple more days, so we'll just be stuck with it. So look, I appreciate you spending some time, with us coming back to talk to us again. I'm just going to kind of dive right in as
Great.
jumping into some things. You recently got invited to go over and meet with the president on some of the infrastructure stuff. What I can only imagine, kind of what was the, I'm not going to
Well, I
interject
mean,
commentary there.
first of all, Brandon, you think infrastructure uh, here in this region, my gosh, the traffic problems we're having, the flood issues that we have, the coastal restoration. So, infrastructure is certainly one of those top tier issues that I want to talk about. And if anybody's going to be pushing initiatives, I want to be talking to them. I want to be in the room because I think it's such an important area for us. Um, I think it's always, an honor, even though I may not agree with the majority of things the president says. I think it's an honor to be invited to a meeting like that and have the chance to dialogue. Our 30-minute meeting turned into almost 2 hours. We covered a lot of ground. And look, I'll be honest, I pushed back really hard on what I see them trying to do with this gross expansion of what they're calling infrastructure, calling things social infrastructure. I don't even know what that means. And so, and then on top of it, saying that we're gonna again have this really expansive or liberal definition of infrastructure, and then we're gonna tax you to pay for it. Like, wait, the federal government's responsible for interstates, which are a disaster. The federal government, including a new crossing of the Mississippi River, the federal government's responsible for, in many cases, flood protection, restoring the coast. We're not where we need to be. Those things alone, just right here in this region, tens of billions of dollars behind, and probably on average, probably somewhere around 30 to 40 years behind where we should be, meaning that the projects that are under construction today are often the projects that our parents and grandparents conceived that we're just now building. So rather than taking that record of failure and delays and saying, hey, let's apply it to more things, let's get it done. Let's focus on the things that are our core responsibility and be good, reliable, funded partners and have an efficient process to get these projects done. So that's really what I pushed hard in the meeting with the president. I said, don't expand. Let's do a better job focusing on the things we need to be doing. Let's put the resources there and let's get rid of this really just overly prescriptive and laborious process of studying projects, and let's focus on turning dirt.
No, it's like I think it's important, whether you agree on all the policies that are coming out, but it's one thing to have, I always say, a seat at the table.
Yep.
It's like, look, you may not agree, but you got to go sit at the table and kind of get through it. And what you were talking about kind of reminded me years ago. I've had a number of different businesses. I remember my wife, we kept building and coming up with just different things. And she looked at me one day and she was like, look, you need to stop building stuff and start billing for stuff, like stop trying to expand. Just go get the initial stuff that you did originally that you said you were going to do. Just go do that and bill for it and then come back and build some more on. So sounds like we're kind of in the same boat.
Yep. Yep.
So, Doug, what does that mean?
Let's throw your wife in these negotiations.
Yeah, that's we might get through them real fast. She doesn't take no. What does that mean for us here? People think infrastructure, and I think everybody's definition, it's such a broad, like you said, it's social infrastructure. What does that mean for people here? What are we looking? I think everybody immediately just goes, bridge. And it's like that's where that's infrastructure, but it's a lot of things that people aren't thinking of.
It is a lot of things, and again, they're trying to make it even more broad, but it is things like a new bridge. And look, that's exactly what we're really focused on, is the I-10 bridges that are needed, the finishing I-49. projects like that. And so that is infrastructure, and those are federal roads. Keep in mind, the federal government needs to be responsible or focused on federal highways and interstates and things like that. It also means some water resource projects, which means our ports, our waterways. It means flood protection projects, hurricane protection, and it means coastal restoration. In Louisiana, just in the southern part of the state, we have about $30 billion of those projects that have been authorized for construction, but aren't moving forward at an appropriate pace. And it also means areas like airports, transit systems, rail, things like that. Those are the main areas. But, Brandon, something that I think is equally as important is it's not just, what's your definition of infrastructure? Okay, let's put more money into it. If your system is incapable of delivering the projects, you've got to look at that system again. So one of the conversations I really pushed with the president was the way that we develop and deliver projects is really flawed. And I'll give you an example. The environmental review process is a law that dates back to the early 1970s. If you look at when the law was first implemented and today, it probably takes you somewhere around 3 to 4 times as long to do your environmental review, 3 to 4 times. And so just to put some, kind of a face on it, the average road project today, just to do the environmental review, that's not the engineering design, it's not any of the other requirements, 7 years. 7 years just to do the environmental review. So why is it going to take 12 years to start building a new bridge? It's because of the ridiculousness of the process. So the thing is you can imagine if the coast is eroding, if we have an imminent threat of flooding, nobody's got 10, 20 years to go through all this, paralysis by analysis to get to the point to where you turn dirt. You've got to have a process that reflects the urgency of your project. The bridge should have been built 30 years ago. So this regular process, it's not going to work for us. So we're spending a lot of time when your question was what's infrastructure, and it's not just projects, it's the process, it's the funding mechanism, it's how you prioritize which projects you're going to build, which ones are going to be on your next tier list, things like that.
That's great. That reminds me, I worked on a project here locally at the state level to where, I guess where I'm going with some of this is some of it, the times need to change. These things were written before there was internet, before there was, phone. Well, I worked a project a few years back where, the chemical plant industry, it was like law that they had to make a telephonic notification to state policemen, had to pick up a phone and call. And it was like, can we not do this electronically? This would go a whole lot faster than having a guy in the middle of an emergency have to pick up the phone and call. But literally one word, and had to go through the whole process to change. But it was amazing. I can imagine going, we're looking for one word change. We're looking for people to realize, yes, internet's sticking around. There's faster ways to do these things. We can collaborate, So anyway, we could probably beat that one, all day. It's the end of it. Tell me, I've heard some rumor. Like I said, I'm not the guy who keeps up with every bit of it, but Louisiana's in a little bit of a unique situation. It sounds like here, where we've got this surplus of money that's come down from the Fed, and we're having to talk. Surplus, means we've got extra. We've got something there left. What do we do with it, and what happens if we don't do anything? And what are people trying to do?
Well, yeah. So Brandon, a few things. Number one, it's surplus, but it's all debt finance, which means our kids and our grandkids are going to be paying it for decades and decades and decades. It was an irresponsible chunk of money that was sent out, $1.9 trillion in all in this package. Just to put things in perspective, just the state government, the state of Louisiana, under this bill alone, received $3.2 billion. That doesn't include about $1.8 billion that they got about a year ago from the federal government. But just that money represents 614% of the actual losses in state government revenue. So meaning if tax revenue came down to here, was here, came down to here, federal government just came in and brought you this much money. So no comparison or relativity on the amount of money. So if you do have this large S or surplus, as you indicated, what do we do with it? Well, I think we've got to recognize this is one-time money. So what are some really big, important things we could be doing with it that maybe fit a one-time kind of lagniappe type definition? And I hate to, keep bringing this back up, or maybe I don't. I love bringing it back up, but we need to invest in infrastructure. It's one of the key areas. And I asked the governor and Senator Cortez and Speaker Schexnayder, the leaders of our legislature and state, I asked them to commit at least $1 billion of that toward the bridges. And I think that the I-49, particularly that portion between Lafayette and New Orleans, is so critical that we finish this work. And so, that would be a big slug of money toward it. I think it helps to, whenever we work on this big infrastructure bill, it sends a clear signal to the federal government. These are projects, these are where our priorities are. Come in and match with us, come in and invest some dollars here. So I think that's a pretty important area where we need to be investing dollars. I think one of the other areas is you have things like broadband deployment. There's no doubt that we learned from the pandemic, with people working at home, with kids schooling at home, that we have areas, including right outside, just right on the edge of Baton Rouge, that do not have the right type of internet connection. No fault of their own. There's just not the infrastructure there to where they could not even reliably work from home, or their kids couldn't reliably be educated from home because of that lack of capacity. So I think that's another area we need to look very carefully. Obviously, education in general is an area, but I think one of the other areas where we certainly could be making some investments is in our law enforcement, just helping to improve some of the law enforcement conditions we've seen. We've seen violent crime rates really spike in Baton Rouge and New Orleans and other areas. We've got to get a handle on this and make sure that it's the peacekeepers that are in control, not the criminals.
So you mentioned, you hit it real quick, the match. So we've got, the surplus of what was given to us, basically like, hey, here's a loan, take it. You have to have it. We don't want it back. We're kind of forcing a loan on you. So we're able to kind of take it, instead of us doing our funds, state funds to match, it's like, we're going to use your own funds to match your own program. So it's not even coming out of the state's budget, I guess, at that point, or does it?
No, well, technically the dollars do become, they do go into the state budget. But there are some federal parameters on what it can be spent on and what it can't be spent on. The Department of the Treasury, who we've been working with, they're going to be issuing some guidance, within the next, in fact, as early as today, and they told us as late as Friday. So this week, we should be getting some guidance that's going to explain exactly what the money can be used for. But it does, in the law, it says things that are pretty vague, like, for example, job creation. Well, building a new bridge starts, that certainly creates new jobs. So we just want to make sure that the bill provides flexibility to do some important things like that, but doesn't allow for irresponsible uses.
I've noticed that's a pattern for the guy who's not big in politics like myself. It's like we get the law and then the guidance tells us what to actually, do. It seems like it would be, we've got it in there already, but it's like, hey, we'll write this, we'll make it real ambiguous, and then we'll figure out how it suits everybody best.
Well, and what's so frustrating is, we were able to secure $1.2 billion, just to give an example, in 2018, February of 2018, $1.2 billion in extra flood protection investments for this region. Do you know it took them almost 2 years to write the guidance? So here you have urgent needs. Those dollars, we could have burned through it very quickly. Urgently needed investments, and it took them almost 2 years just to write the guidance on what the money could be used for. 131 pages, I think. It's like the people are paid by the page.
Jeez, that's crazy. So tell me this, switching gears a little bit. I keep hearing bits and pieces, and I'm sure everybody else does, on this, Green New Deal. Is it Green New Deal? It seemed like New Green Deal would sound better. Like I don't know.
It's pretty amazing. This is one of these things that kind of covers the gambit from A to Z. Its objectives are everything from universal basic income, giving everyone an opportunity for a job, kind of world peace. I mean, it's one of these things that purports to achieve all these objectives. The reality is that if I remember right, I think the total cost of it to actually implement it would be somewhere around 93, ready for it, $1 trillion. The annual budget of the country's around 4 trillion. Just to give a little bit of perspective. Free education, guaranteed job, guaranteed income, banning some of the most affordable energy streams, like, for example, natural gas as an energy source. We saw what happens in Texas whenever you have the freezes, when you're overly reliant upon intermittent energy sources like wind and solar. Effectively eliminates the majority of vehicles. I mean, just it could have a big impact on air travel. But look, so Brandon, what's important is for us to talk about on this issue. What is the objective? The objective is, as you hear them tell it, the objective is a healthy environment. Look, we've got kids. I hope to have grandkids and great grandkids and all that. Look, I want to have a healthy environment. I want our kids to have a healthy environment, inherit a healthy planet from us, which I think everybody wants. But you can get sucked up in this, in this whole just campaign of climate change and greening the environment and protecting our future. Let me give you a fact. Fact is that there's one country that's reduced emissions more than the next 12 emissions reducing countries combined. Guess which country that is? That would be America. That's exactly right. That's us. And so give you another fact. For every 1 ton of emissions we've reduced over the last 15, 17 years, China's increased by 4. Okay, so the way this works, it's not if we clean things up in the United States from an emissions perspective, then we're all good. It's a global issue. And so the globe is not all doing things in the right direction, then nobody benefits. If the US is reducing 1 while China increases 4, that is in the wrong direction. That's a net in the wrong direction. Even under the Paris Accords, which people are out there saying, oh, this new Paris climate agreement is great, it results in a increase in emissions, not a decrease. Again, wrong direction. Even under the Paris Accords with China's, way out of whack emissions, they're allowed to continue under the Paris Accords. They're allowed to continue increasing their emissions through 2030 before they're even going to begin plateauing or hopefully start decreasing at some point in time. So if you're sort of supportive of protecting the environment, this whole deal doesn't move the needle in the right direction. It's going to drive up cost, have a disproportionate impact on Americans, eliminate some of the most affordable clean energy solutions we have, like nuclear and natural gas. It doesn't make sense, not well thought out. And if I didn't read the version this year, but the one they did last Congress, actually went through and read it. They had grammar issues in there. They had things that they were using terms differently in different sections. It looked like it was, hey, you write a piece, I'm going to write a piece, and just all these different people threw it together. It wasn't well thought out. It wasn't really consistent. And this entire sort of initiative just does not seem to be based on science or reality, or recognize the fact that the United States is leading the world in reducing emissions.
I guess part of me, I just hear all that and it just screams in the back of my head. It's like, we've got bigger problems to deal with right now than trying to do something that we can't even necessarily afford. It'd be like, going and saying you're going to go build, the $200 million house when you're making $30,000 a year. It's like, why are you wasting your time at this point? You need to focus on what's going to improve your life right now and help everyone now. And yeah, we can look at that, but let's be realistic.
Well, you're right. And Brandon, something else that's really concerning, not just the jobs it would impact here in Louisiana, but guess who makes about 90% of the solar panels used around the world? China.
That's good.
And so, what happens when you ban all oil and gas that we have abundantly here in Louisiana and the United States? What happens when you ban it all? We become more dependent upon Chinese solar panels. So then the things like wind and solar, they're intermittent energies, sources. They don't sun doesn't shine all the time, wind doesn't blow all the time. So you have to store the energy. So you have to have these really big, expensive batteries. Guess who has cornered the market on all the rare earth and strategic minerals needed to make the batteries? China. Who has invested all the money in the manufacturing facilities to build the batteries? China. So look, you're going to kill jobs in the United States. You're going to create jobs in China. You're going to end up shifting more trade deficit, more. We're going to have more deficit here and trade more economic activity to them, to their favor, more jobs there. And China's not our friend. So you're giving them another lever to pull. United States, you're not acting right. We're going to cut back on the number of batteries we send you, or we're going to increase the price of the solar panels, or we're not going to give them to you. I mean, we can't subject ourselves to those types of whims or that type of leverage. So then people say, oh, well, look, we'll just do it all in the United States. Well, we're well aware. China uses slave labor with the Uyghurs. They use child labor. They don't care about their environment. We're never going to be able to compete economically. So further driving up prices for electricity and energy in the United States, it's just like, who came up with this Green New Deal? Was it China? Because that's whose hands you're playing into.
Something just popped, kind of as you were talking about it. We hear all the time when, countries don't play nice with us, that we're going to, there's going to become tariffs. There's going to become sanctions. There's going to be this, there's going to be that. I don't think anybody's ever worried about that from coming the other direction, really, right? But we start moving and getting more dependent. Like you said, it's okay. Hey, we're not shipping batteries in, that's not, we're going to double the price, these things, those are real things that we've never had to worry about, here, because we were the big guy, kind of throw our weight around a little bit. Maybe there was some other, but if we start handing over, like, hey, we're going to give you all this leverage, just take it. You don't get to ask for it back. There's not a redo, right?
Oh, you really got to think through this stuff. It's a very dangerous direction, and you got to look at energy, so almost like a currency, like like monetary instrument, and just really be thoughtful about how to do this moving forward, because it can have profound consequences on Louisiana, on the United States. And Green New Deal is one of those things that nobody spent any time thinking through or came up with a real deliberate plan on, because other than, as I said, somewhat facetiously before, is China.
So tell me, and kind of ask another question, but tie it all in there, between, the Green New Deal, we're, 5 months, we're so many months down the road. What is it like in Washington? Are people fighting more than we thought? Is it like, hey, it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be? Or, when you get in there and have to, make the phone call or go walk down, are people still respectful, to everybody? Is it, are people getting along, or is it like, no, we're not even going to have the conversation?
It's probably a little bit worse, honestly. And I want to be clear, though. Look, there's some good people that work in Washington, both Republicans and Democrats. There's some good folks. But I think that Speaker Pelosi is exercising way too much control right now over the House of Representatives. It's like the rest of us are just, there as her little minions, and she does whatever she wants. She has a majority of the vote she controls. So I can stand up and oppose everything she does, and we're just going to get run over repeatedly. But I'll tell you, we fight anyway. I'm not going to just fall down. And if they're bringing up policies that aren't well thought out or will have a big economic impact on our families, our ability to meet the bottom line at home, if it'll have a big impact on jobs, we're getting in big fights. In fact, last week and the week before, we had some really big knockdown, drag-outs, votes in committee and amendment debates and things like that. It's amazing what's going on, but we've got to stand up for facts. Just the most concerning thing is it just seems that science and economics has been thrown out the window, and that they're just pursuing an agenda relentlessly without a lot of thought into long-term consequences.
I guess that goes to what they're saying is, common sense isn't very common anymore.
No, it's not. It's not. It really isn't.
That's so tell me, we're not in election season right now. We're not in the big swing of things. What does the average person do to affect change? I grew up as a kid, I remember people, it's like, write your congressman, like, no, now it's, is it email him or is it tweet your congressman? What is it? But, at the end of the day, what can somebody really do, to really get down into it?
No, it's a good question. And you're exactly right that things are evolving, and where I think historically writing a letter to your member of Congress, which still it's still effective and still helps to inform us on where your priorities are, with things moving as quickly as they are. A lot of times, getting online and communicating with us through our virtual correspondence mechanism, which you can connect through our website. It's faster and it gets information much faster. But the other thing is I think something you can do is helping to kind of help to establish or ground public sentiment. And let me give you an example. You've seen big battles recently on if transgender folks or people who identify as certain sexes should be able to go to whatever bathroom they want or participate in sports. You've seen in some cases where people's faith is being, I guess their religious liberties are being infringed upon. You've seen where, and I just mentioned the $1.9 trillion coronavirus-ish bill. Now they're trying to do a $4 trillion infrastructure, including social infrastructure bill. They're trying to do a $2 trillion social welfare bill on top of the $4 trillion appropriations process. So, I mean, just like, hold on, you talk about your $30,000 salary and your $2 million or $200 million house. These don't connect. And so, while people may be there saying, "Oh, hey, look, I'd love a $1,400 check," do you realize that stimulus check? Do you realize that on average that $1.9 trillion coronavirus bill cost each taxpayer $13,200? I mean, so you're going to be responsible for $13,200 on average per taxpayer plus interest. But don't worry, you just got $1,200. Like, whoa, hang on. And Brendan, look, we all know people that have lost their jobs, that are struggling financially with their families. And for those folks, I want to get help to them. But to just go out there and just throw this money all over the place as though it grows on trees, not keeping in mind the consequences, not okay. So I think, people getting out there and registering, hey, wait a minute, I'm actually not okay with this. Let's do a better job focusing on the people that need help. Number two, yeah, absolutely. We need a fix, we need a new bridge crossing the river. We need better infrastructure, but I don't want to go out there and go do these gross expansions of social welfare programs and do social infrastructure. I want to focus on the core areas of responsibility of infrastructure. You know what? Actually, I would like my daughter to be in the bathroom with other females. I'd like my daughter to be able to compete in sports with, folks where there's level playing field, and just, look, just registering your thoughts and feelings and concerns when things come up. And if you feel differently than the positions I said, then share that as well. But I think that a lot of people, and statistics, a lot of polls have shown this, people are feeling uncomfortable actually raising their voice, not raising their voices, registering their opinions is probably a better way of putting it, with the concern that they're going to be slapped down. Look, we represent 800,000 people. And if we're only hearing from one side, then it really distorts our ability to represent. And so I just think it's so important for people to, call, email, connect with us, share their thoughts on social media with other folks. Of course, do it respectfully, but I do just think it's important that people push back on areas where they have concerns, and of course express support for ideas and policies where they think it's in our best interest as a community.
No, I think as you said, that I talked with a lot of people that are, whether it be they're starting a new business and, they kind of run out, and it seems like, the first thing they do is they go raise money, and I kind of, I understand that, but it's a little bit different. I don't believe the money is the answer to the problem, because eventually, if you just keep throwing money at the problem, you're not really going to solve the problem, and so I've always believed if there's a good enough idea, I tell people who come to me from business advice or just from an entrepreneur, it's like, look, you got to earn some little sweat equity, but at the same time, don't worry about the money. If you got a good product, you got a good team, you know, the money will find its way there. You know, somebody will come. Don't go run out and try to, you know, invest and be this pre-revenue and just keep expecting to throw, you know, we need another round of money. We need another round of money. Those bailouts, they don't last. We need to fundamentally find, you know, the root of the problem. So I guess last question I've got, you know, for you today, so we bump up, you know, time, you know, for families, you know, general, you know, is there anything that you can think of that, you know, really families need to be looking at? You mentioned, you know, I've got, you know, I think a lot of our kids are the same age. You know, I've got a 13-year-old daughter and 8-year-old twin boys. I got a business to run. I got things to do. You know, what should parents, you know, what should families be, you know, like, hey, I need to keep a pulse on this, you know, this Green Deal, you know, that's a no. We don't want that. We want a new Green Deal. We don't want this one. You know, is there anything that people should kind of keep an idea?
We might need to borrow that name from you. I like that. So you know, Brendan, we've covered a lot of topics today, and you know, I think first of all, for families, sharing priorities. What are your priorities? And the things that I hear most often, people say, look, violent crime is out of hand. Traffic is a major problem. Yes, we need a hand up because we're going through tough times right now, and maybe some families are. But I don't want to have tax rates in the future that are going to be just off the charts because we've got to pay back this debt or fund irresponsible government programs and allowing government to continue growing to where it's not just doing the role of the state government, or excuse me, of the federal government, but it's also doing the job or at least funding the operations of the state government, the local government, the communities, churches, family. Look, government can't play the role as mama. And that's kind of what we're seeing. I think that families need to stand up and say that, you know, look, I wanted the ability to be able to raise my kids with the values and the beliefs that, you know, that we have, and not have government come in and put obstacles, impediments, or infringe upon our ability to do that, which is what we're seeing today with government. I think what we've seen in the last 4 months is some of the fastest just changes, and not good. I think adverse changes and infringements upon family and freedom than our country has probably ever seen. What you're seeing right now with some of the attempts changes on votes, preventing laws that require an ID to be submitted to go vote, preventing it. Yet you have to show an ID to get on an airplane, to go to the doctor, to go to the bank, to go to a casino, to, you know, all these things, to buy tobacco or alcohol. You got to show an ID, but it would be illegal to show it to go vote. Making Washington, D.C. a state. The reason they're doing that is they're trying to force this liberal control of the federal government forever. Washington, D.C. is 60-something square miles. It's a very small area. It's a federal district. Give it back to Maryland if people want representation. Just do that. I'd support that if they want to do that. Except maintain the federal district, the White House, the Capitol, the federal buildings. Maintain that as a federal district. I mean, just all of these things are designed to have long-term control in a very liberal direction for our country. People have got to speak up. They've got to speak out. They've got to be involved, because America did not become the greatest country, the most exceptional nation in the world as a result of socialist programs or disincentivizing work. They did it because of the freedoms, because of the liberty, and because incentivizing the ingenuity, the hard work, and the efficiency that America is so well known for. And I'm really concerned about the direction that the country's going in now, the impact it will have on our children. So if you have a family, I'd strongly urge you, take a careful look at what's going on. Don't let them destroy our energy markets, make us more dependent upon foreign energy sources, paying higher costs, not being able to drive our cars, driving up taxes, taking away our religious freedoms. Speak up, speak out, and make sure that we have an America that you can be proud to give to our children and grandchildren.
Oh, absolutely. I think that sums, you know, pretty much everything, you know, that people need to do, and to take some action, you know, take some ownership, you know, everything, you know. And I always say, I don't have a problem having a conversation with somebody who doesn't, see eye to eye. I enjoy it. It's almost
Yep.
like, convert me, don't get mad at me, try to explain it, walk me through the process. Instead, people just get mad, get mad, get mad. And that, I think we need to stop getting mad and, respect people, listen, and maybe you pick up something, maybe you don't. But at the end of the day, we got to get back to some basic, core values that I guess started us off, and we're losing sight of that. And so I think it's going to take the family stepping back up and saying, no, this is how, we're going to do it. I talked, the other day with Mayor Broom here about, she was talking about litter. And I was like, look, I'll say it. You can't say it. It starts with the parents. When you open the door and the trash falls out and your 7-year-old, 8-year-old jumps out of the car and you tell them, go chase that trash down and pick it up. That's the little things that make a difference. We can't just make policy and all of a sudden litter goes away. It's family values starting there, from the beginning. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point.
well, look, sir, I tell everybody you have a lot more important things to do than sit around and talk to me. I appreciate you making some time on Monday morning. We'll kind of get through this week with this weather, and best of luck. If there's anything we can do, let us know to help.
Thanks, Brandon. Great seeing you again.
All right.
Take care.